WGBH's award-winning series Frontline premieres its newest documentary tonight. It's called Gunned Down, and it examines the vast power of the NRA in American politics. It also recounts the NRA's beginnings and evolution.
This is an organization that back in the 60s was a very tame, not particularly political organization.
The NRA was a safety organization. They helped people teach their children and their friends and family how to use and store and keep firearms safely.
The turning point, according to the documentary, was a 1968 gun control bill which banned mail-order sales and restricted some purchases.
NRA people said, wait a minute, we've got other things to worry about than teaching guys how to shoot or how to hunt and so forth or collect guns. And that was the transformative period.
It formally happened in 1977 at the NRA convention in Cincinnati.
When it was over, some dissident members had taken control of the 400,000-member organization. What it means is even stricter support for the right to bear arms and against gun control.
Joining me now is one of the producers of this documentary, Mike Weiser, an Emmy and Peabody Award-winning producer and writer who's worked on several Frontline investigations. Mike, welcome to Greater Boston.
Thanks, I'm glad to be here.
Let me ask you about that evolution that took place from the late 60s to the late 70s. Was it, in fact, an evolution of the NRA's purpose, or was it more of a coup?
Well, it did happen at one convention in the NRA when a lot of the gun rights activists did stage what's been called a coup and take over the organization. It was at a moment when they were deciding which way they were going to go. Were they going to move out west and be an organization that represented sportsmen, or were they going to be an organization that focused on gun rights? And that was the moment when the NRA became a real political player and the beginning of what would take a decades to achieve of being one of the most powerful special interest groups in Washington.
When that coup occurred, would you say that a majority of members backed the new, sort of more aggressive political vision, or was it a minority taking control of an organization and steering it on a new path?
Well, it depends on who you ask inside the NRA, but a lot of the rank and file members say that they weren't being represented by the sort of old guard of the NRA, by the sportsmen, by the Northeast element that had run the
George H.W. Bush type cardholders, right?
That's right, and they saw a real threat from the new gun control laws that they thought their guns were in danger, and that the NRA, it was time for them to step up and to get involved in politics.
One thing I learned from your documentary is that the Wayne LaPierre, who I've seen in recent years and who we've all seen, the sort of, very, very passionate about guns, intensely aggressive and political, shrewd political operator, that wasn't that same Wayne LaPierre who initially took the reins of the organization, right? He was a different type of figure.
That's right. He wasn't somebody who was known as being a hunter or even being into guns. One of the people that we spoke to who worked with him at the NRA said the safest place to be with Wayne LaPierre and a gun was in another state. And that was sort of a joke inside NRA headquarters. But he was somebody who loved politics, and he loved the politics of the NRA, and he studied the politics of the gun issue, and he in fact studied guns and learned about guns and learned about what his constituency was inside the NRA. And he, more than anybody, managed to bridge the different groups inside the NRA to rise to power and have unrivaled control of the organization.
Sometimes the members weren't entirely happy with the decisions he made, right? I mean, he ended up having to apologize for some statements he made. Remind me, it was in the Clinton administration?
That's right.
And what were these comments he made about jackbooted government thugs coming for people's guns?
Well, this was right around the time of the Oklahoma City bombings, and the NRA had been trying to raise money by sending out a fundraising letter that had warned about jackbooted government thugs. And many of the members inside the organization were outraged, including former President George H.W. Bush, who resigned his membership. And LaPierre came out and apologized for this, but many of the members of the organization were angry. They felt that he was stepping back and that he shouldn't have apologized. And many of the people we spoke to said that that was a learning moment for LaPierre, that he learned not to back down.
I'm glad you mentioned that, because one thing that has struck me in recent years is that we've had gun-related tragedy after tragedy after tragedy. I'm thinking of Columbine, of Newtown, of the shooting in which Gabby Giffords was severely injured. And it seems after those moments like there's momentum on the side of gun control legislation. And invariably, the NRA comes out very, very aggressively, giving no quarter to people who want more regulation. I think we actually can take a look at what Wayne LaPierre had to say after the shootings at Sandy Hook.
The only thing that stops a bad guy with a gun is a good guy with a gun.
I remember watching that speech and thinking, oh, he's totally tone deaf. What's he doing? He's, no pun intended, shooting himself in the foot. And it turns out he wasn't, right? And this method works for them.
That's right. A lot of the NRA insiders and others that we spoke to said that that was a very calculated move. For many people who saw that speech, they said, what is he doing? He's marginalizing the organization. But inside the NRA, they knew that a speech like that would rile up its members, would get the support of gun rights activists, and would bring money into the organization. And that has been the strategy that LaPierre learned early on and has implemented over the years in tragedy after tragedy.
You were unable to get any current members of the NRA to speak with you, correct? Why wouldn't they talk?
It's not only us. The NRA often doesn't talk to the media. They have their own network of communication with their members. They have television shows, radio, direct appeals to their members.
Wait, actually, I'm sorry to interrupt. Sure. Where do they have a TV show? I didn't even know there was an NRA TV show.
On cable, they have a number of different TV shows.
Shame on me for not knowing.
Yeah, there's a whole media empire that the NRA has, and so they don't need the rest of the media. And in fact, they don't particularly mind their portrayal in the rest of the media because they can always complain about it to their members, which gets that many of their members to support them even more. So they're sort of impervious to the type of concern about the media that others would have.
With the caveat that you didn't speak with any current members, based on the research you and your colleagues did for this, is there something about what motivates the NRA's members that those of us who are not part of the organization and view it quizzically that we just don't get?
Well, we did speak with current members. We didn't speak with any current leader.
I'm sorry. Thank you for setting this straight.
Of the organization. But I think that the thing that most people don't get is that for a lot of members of the NRA, the issue that draws them to the organization isn't guns. It's what guns represent. It's the freedom that they believe come from their right to have a firearm. And I think for people who aren't firearms owners, who aren't gun owners, and who aren't believers in the Second Amendment, it seems like it's just a gun. But for a lot of members of the NRA, it's more than that. It represents freedom, liberty.
Last question for you briefly. You say the NRA helped deny Al Gore the presidency. That's a strong statement. You really think they did?
Well, what we say is that in Washington, they believe that Al Gore was denied the presidency. And there's obviously lots of things happened with Al Gore, but in a number of key, crucial states, the NRA turned out in force against Al Gore. And in Washington,
Ohio, and Tennessee, his home state.
That's right. And in Washington, a lot of people do believe that that the NRA cost Al Gore the election, and a lot of politicians to this day are afraid to go up against the organization because of that.
Okay, Mike Weiser, thank you.